I know many of you probably know who John Lennox is, but a lot don't. So if you don't know who he is, he's a mathematician and a scientist and brilliant. Listen to this first clip.
One of the reasons I'm sitting here as a believer, 80 years old and a scientist, is that I've discovered in life there are answers. Sometimes you have to wait a bit and you have to do some work. But that's important, that the questions that bother you, start to do a bit of reading. Talk to other people openly about your questions and your doubts. Virtually all the great pioneers of modern science, starting with Galileo, Kepler, Newton, coming up through Faraday, Clark, Maxwell, they were all believers in God. And historians have noticed this. And C.S. Lewis put it beautifully as usual. And he summed it up this way. He said, men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in the legislator.
And that's our Constitution, right? The founding fathers saw law in nature.
The laws of nature,
The
nature's
natural
God.
They saw because there was a law bigger than nature.
Yes, and in fact, he's called, our creator is called the supreme judge of the world. You know, I used to take my students in my world history classes to the library in the scientific revolution unit, and I would say, okay, guys, let's go research Sir Isaac Newton. Let's go research Faraday, etc. They were blown away at how Christian they were. I have here a copy of Mathematical Principles by Sir Isaac Newton. He wrote this for dummies like me about his mathematical principles. The most beautiful system of the sun, the planets, and the comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. This being governs all things as the Lord God, and he quotes in Greek here, and then he goes on to say, my God, your God, the God of Israel, the God of God and Lord of lords, is Yahweh. This is unbelievable. People don't know this about Sir Isaac Newton.
Science, and John Lennox talks about this extensively in some of his clips. John Lennox, you need to look him up. He actually made the argument that modern science exists because Christians were looking at things that explained what the realities were, the higher picture. Yeah. And it's, as he points out, it's only been about 120 years that the last century had decided that science and faith have nothing in common. But that's very, very new.
And what really upsets me is how these leftists, these wokocrats, these educators, they deny this. They don't want our students to know this. And I made a point all those years that I was teaching that they would do research and find out the truth of the scientific revolution.
Also really easy to point out to these kids, even before I start talking pro-faith.
Yeah.
I point out how much faith you find in science, how much depends on faith. And again, that's one of the things Lennox talks about. We have one more clip from him. I wish we could probably do
a whole show
30,
on this.
Maybe we should down the road.
Do it.
30 minutes. Yeah,
yep.
Maybe we'll do a special show. But watch the second clip.
The human genome, the DNA molecule, is an information-bearing molecule. Look up there, EXIT. You see 4 letters. You know that has a meaning. And you will deduce immediately that whatever physical processes went into producing that, there's a mind behind it. And yet, some of my colleagues can look at the DNA molecule with the word 3.4 billion letters long and say it was chance and the laws of nature. You know, I said to them, tell me the origin of what you do science with, your brain or your mind. And they say, well, the brain is the end product of a mindless, unguided process. And I smile at them and I say, and you trust it? Tell me honestly, if you knew that your computer that you're going to use tomorrow in your lab was the end product of an unguided, mindless process, would you trust it? And from every scientist I've asked that question, with hesitation, I've had the answer, no, I would not. And I said, I see you have a problem.
When you open a book, you immediately see that this is language and it is human.
From an intelligent
from
being.
An intelligent being, exactly. And then the scientists will turn around and say 3.4 billion letters that spell out the gene code. Yeah. 3.4 billion, and call that random.
I don't have enough faith to be an atheist.
No, me either. And what he said at the end was powerful. If I ask scientists all across the world, do you believe that something that was randomly created, not created, but just random, would you trust it? And all the scientists he's ever talked to had to say no. And if your brain is just random, why do you believe your own rationality?
That's right.